Bhante, it takes time to develop supernatural powers, right? It's not an automatic byproduct, and it takes time to develop them. So, and it has nothing to do with the final realization. So what's the purpose for those hundreds of monks to develop supernormal powers?
It's a very good question. Okay, what I could just give is there's no clear statement in the text about this. So this is my opinion or my conjecture. First, in India at that time, and even going back centuries, probably before the time of the Buddha, there would be yogis who developed these powers. Okay, so for the Buddhists to stand out on the Indian spiritual scene, the Buddhist renunciants, the monastics, would also have to develop these psychic powers. If they didn't develop them, then the Waidao Chujia Ren, the non-Buddhist ascetics, would have proven themselves to be superior to the Buddhist ascetics in the eyes of ordinary people. So I'm going to say that might be one reason that the Buddha and the Buddhist monastics put some emphasis on developing the psychic powers. Another reason might be that they were considered to be just, not apart from any kind of competitive relationship, but they would be considered to be part of the complete, say, perfection of the attainment of the final goal. So there is liberation possible without the psychic powers, without the miraculous powers, but we could say a fuller perfection. Let us say that sort of the minimal accomplishment of the final goal would be that of an arhat who doesn't have even the jhanas, but just the dry insight arahat. But then more complete than that would be arhatship together with the jhanas and the formless samapattis. That would be the ubbhattobhaga, vimutta arhats, the arhats liberated in both ways, by means of wisdom, cutting off defilements, and by means of the samadhis, gaining access to the different deeper states of consciousness. Okay, then more complete even than the two ways liberated arhat will be the arhats who possess the three true knowledges, or three clear knowledges: recollection of past lives, the divine I, and the knowledge of liberation. And then more complete than that would be those arhats who possess all six abhinyas: the psychic powers, divine ear, the ability to read the minds of others, recollection of their past lives, the divine eye, and the knowledge of liberation. And so it just makes the final goal more complete. And then still a third reason might be mentioned, and that is that possessing these, for those who are in positions of teachers and who want to sort of excel in the ability to teach and transform others, possession of those psychic powers will enable them to know how to teach others under the appropriate conditions, and even to make displays of psychic powers in order to break down the resistance of others and to transform them and to attract them. It's different from using the psychic powers, to making a display of the psychic powers in order to impress people, in order to get offerings, and to boost up one's own personal prestige. But it could be the case that a monastic who has these psychic powers can skillfully, on occasion, use them in order to transform other people's attitudes and views. For example, if one sees somebody taking a path of wrong action, misconduct, say a yogi who has the ability to show other realms of existence might show them the sufferings of the hell realms, and then instill in them a sense of dread of rebirth in the hell that their misconduct was leading them to. Or show them the suffering, showing a miser the misery in the realm of the afflicted spirits, the pretas who are reborn there because of their miserliness. So that would be my understanding.
Is there a minimum requirement for the jhana to be able to develop?
Is there a minimum requirement?
Right.
I think it depends on the degree to which one wants to develop those psychic powers and which ones one wants to develop. It would seem to me that, say, the ability to read the minds of others would require, let us say, to have that at one's command, rather than just depending on chance, the chance ability to read the minds of others. It might be that the 4 jhanas are sufficient. Like in the suttas, one always sees the 4 jhanas presented as sort of the basis for the different types of psychic powers. But in the Visuddhimagga, and I think the Visuddhimagga is giving this explanation particularly in regard to the iddhis, not just the other abhinyas, like reading the minds of others, but the iddhis, like the ability to multiply one's body, to walk on water, to fly through the sky. So to accomplish those, the Visuddhimagga says that one first is supposed to attain the 8 samapattis, the 4 jhanas and the 4 formless meditations. And then one has to develop various skills based on the jhanas and the formless meditations. You find this in Visuddhimagga, chapter 12, 13. It must be in chapter 12. For example, one has to be able to go very quickly through in and out of each of the attainments, so that one could do it just, I want to go into the first jhana, I just make up the determination. I want to go into the first jhana for 1 minute, so I go in, I'm in for 1 minute, then I'm out. Then right after that, I make the determination to go into the second jhana for 1 minute, I'm in, I'm out. I want to go into the third jhana for 1 minute, I go in, I'm out. This way one goes through the 8 samapattis. Okay, then one comes back down, then one wants to go into first jhana, third jhana, first formless attainment, third formless attainment. Then one decides, I want to go into the second jhana, fourth jhana, second formless attainment, fourth formless attainment. It's a little bit like juggling the balls, the juggler juggling the balls. So you play around with these jhanic attainments, and then one is supposed to, let's say, be able to go into the first jhana based on the earth kasina, second jhana based on the water kasina. First one goes into the first jhana based on the earth. One goes through the 8 samapattis, the 8 attainments based on the earth kasina. Then the second jhana based on the water kasina. Goes through the 8 attainments based on the earth kasina. Then the 8 attainments based on the water kasina. Then the 8 attainments based on the fire kasina. The 8 based on the wind kasina, the air kasina. Then the 8 based on the blue kasina, then based on the yellow kasina, based on the red kasina, based on the white kasina. Okay, then one does it going into the first jhana based on the earth kasina, second jhana based on the water kasina, third jhana based on the fire kasina, fourth jhana based on the air kasina, first formless attainment based on the blue kasina, second formless attainment based on the yellow kasina, third formless attainment based on the red kasina, fourth formless attainment based on the blue, red, yellow, white kasina. And so it's kind of like mental gymnastics so that one gets this complete, what one is developing are the skills of kamanyata, mututa, kamanyata, lahuta. So it's wieldiness of the mind so that one can develop this flexibility of the mind and agility of the mind and wieldiness of the mind. So when one masters all of those skills, then one could start developing the psychic powers systematically, not just depending on chance. By the way, is Bhante still eating his lunch in the dining room? Call him. I want to get him in here.
Bhante, I have a question about the things that create by supernatural power.
The question about
the things created by supernatural powers.
Yeah.
Are they real or they just tricks to the mind?
the space created.
The things. Say, for example, the beautiful woman created by Buddha,
Yeah.
or the elephant created by the teacher.
Yeah.
Are those things real or they're just tricks to the mind?
They're just illusions.
They're just illusion.
Yeah.
So in that case, how come the teacher will be so afraid of the illusion? Because the elephant is created by his supernatural power.
Yeah.
He can just, make it disappear.
Yeah, but when it's charged, first of all, it's a story. Whether the story really took place, I don't know. But suppose it's something that really happened. Just suppose. Whether it did or not, I don't know. Okay, but suppose, I create the elephant through my psychic power, and then I command the elephant come running after me, but it looks so real, and it's charging at me full speed ahead, so I just forget that I've created it through my psychic power, and I think, wow, it's going to come trampling me, charging right at me and trampling me, and then I go into a panic. So I lose my cool, and I get carried away, I become convinced of the reality of the illusion created by myself. But the elephant is not really there in the story.
So touching the moon, touching the sun is also illusion. How can someone be, touching the sun that is so hot?
Yeah, it must be just an illusion that he can create, an appearance of him touching the sun, touching the moon.
Look how a movie can terrify you.
Yeah, exactly. That's a very good analogy. Like you see the vampire movie? People see like the vampire comes into the Dracula comes into disappears from outside, and then the mist appears, and then the mist turns into Dracula inside. What's her name? Mina? The other? Lucy? Yeah, Lucy's room. And then Dracula comes leaning over her with his fangs appear. And the people in the audience are screaming, ah! And they're screaming, wake up, Lucy, wake up, Lucy. Yeah, so you get convinced of the reality of the movie. Yeah, but of course in the dream you're not aware that it's a dream. But in the movie, it's just a movie, but if it's scary, you get really scared. If it's an emotional movie, the lovers break up and then you're weeping. Yeah, so the illusions can be quite convincing.
And the question from the internet is would Bande, that means you, said that the New Age movement is focused on supernatural power?
The New Age movement.
I read that. I do not know what does it mean.
Yeah. I remember something called the New Age movement in the 1960s. Now, let's see, 1960s to let's say 1968, just for argument's sake. So now the New Age movement is 50 years old. And the people involved with the New Age movement, let's say 1968, were in their early 20s. Now they're in their early 70s. I don't know whether the New Age movement was so focused on supernatural powers, but the tendency in the New Age movement was to sort of mix a little bit of different spiritual traditions together, mixing a little bit of Hinduism, a little bit of Buddhism, a little bit of Taoism, a little bit mystical Christianity, and then from Judaism, Kabbalah, with a dash of paganism, and still how to lead a comfortable and exciting life, while getting little dashes and bits and pieces of spirituality here and there. Yeah, Osman?
Yeah, Bhante, I have a question about when one becomes an arahant and they have knowledge of the destructions of the taints,
Yeah.
as well as the destructions of the 10 feathers.
Right, yeah.
Included in there is the destruction of the conceit.
Yeah.
I am. So
Yeah.
I would imagine in their thinking,
Yeah.
the concept of I am would be pronounced in that it's no longer relevant.
Yeah.
I don't see how you could think that you're arahant and that concept would be still there.
Wait, say again.
I don't see how someone that's not an arahant, that has the concept of I am,
Yeah.
could think he's an arahant.
Oh, I see, I see. Okay, I mean, with reference to the story about, okay, well, it's said that monk, the teacher, that no defiled thoughts arose in his mind, but I guess what didn't arise would be thoughts of sensual desire and thoughts of anger or ill will. Probably there would have been the subtle residue of the thought, I am, still occurring in him. But that thought, I am, could be very, very subtle. And so he didn't recognize it, even though those thoughts would occur. And so because they occurred at a subtle level, for him that wasn't strong enough to convince him that I'm not an arhat. Like I knew a monk years ago who thought he was an anagami. I think I've mentioned him in class several times. Okay, an anagami has gotten rid of ill will or anger. But when this monk would subtly drop hints that he was an anagami, a non-returner, and somebody would even subtly question him, like, really? When did you attain anagamihood? Or how could you attain anagamihood? If he felt any kind of challenge to his claim, he would get angry with them. Not only get angry on the spot, but then he would bear resentment against that person who challenged his attainment and start angrily denouncing him to other monks. So he knows, he was like well educated in the Dhamma, so he knew that an anagami doesn't give rise to anger. And he would get extremely angry and upset, and yet he still went on believing he was anagami. Excuse me? I can't make any judgments like that. Let us just say, from my point of view, the fact that he got angry belies his claim to have been an anagami.
Bhante, the 8 attainments are the base for developing supernatural powers, but in class you also mentioned that 4 bases.
Iddhipadas.
Yeah, what are the 4 iddhipadas?
Okay, yeah, the iddhipadas, those would be the means for developing samadhi. Okay, so the 4 iddhipadas, let's see, it's Chandidhipada. So the 4 are, I mean, you find them, the whole formulas in Anguttara Nikaya, chapter 51. So the 4 distinguishing factors are desire. This is not craving, but it's the desire, or let's say resolve on attainment. Then the second is energy or effort. The third is citta, mind. And then the 4th is vimamsa, investigation. So those are the 4 different factors, and then each one is endowed with or accompanied by the 4 kinds of right effort. Chandidhipada. Samadhi, Padana, Sankara. I think it's Chandidhipada, Samadhi, Padana, Sankara. Okay, so anyway, those are the 4 means of developing samadhi, the samadhi to be used as a basis for psychic powers. So first, I think one has to, according to the Visuddhimagga system, one has to develop this skill, all of these skills and flexibility of mind through the jhanas and through the formless meditations. And then in that way, one has developed a great deal of skill with samadhi, but then to turn it to the specific task of developing the iddhis, then one goes through developing samadhi through those 4 iddhipadas, through desire, energy, citta, mind, and vimamsa, investigation. And then when those 4 become well established, then one could direct one's mind towards the display of the different iddhis. You find the method explained in detail, as I said, in Visuddhimagga, chapter 12.
Ask one more question.
Yeah.
It has nothing to do with our class today, but with the retreat, related to the past, the retreat that just passed. Does any sutta in the Nikaya mention one has to emerge out of the jhana to contemplate, to do? vipassana in the Nikayas?
No, to my knowledge, no. And so there are a couple of suttas that if you read them just on sort of on the face value, it seems to be saying that one is doing the vipassana, the insight, inside the jhana itself. Whereas the commentary says that to practice insight, one has to emerge from the jhana to practice insight. And to me, the position of the commentary seems more reasonable. Because one could see, okay, maybe in the first jhana, where there's still vitakka vichara, one could say, okay, in the first jhana, one could practice insight while one is absorbed in the jhana. But what about, there are suttas that say that one develops insight inside the base of infinite space, base of infinite consciousness, and so on, where it's, in those cases, vitakka vichara, all kinds of thinking have been completely eliminated. So how could there be vipassana in that attainment when there's no thinking at all going on? Seems that insight depends on, it's not discursive or wandering thinking, but it's the distinguishing of the distinctive characteristics of phenomena and then observing the arising and passing of phenomena. And to be able to note the arising and passing, it seems to require some kind of activity of thought. So in this respect, I would agree with the commentaries. Yeah, just one thing more with the psychic powers. Like, those are not necessary for the attainment of arhatship. And even Venerable Sariputta, who is like the disciple foremost in wisdom, it seems that he didn't have the psychic powers at all. Like, there's a little sutta that comes in the Udana, where Sariputta, on a full moon night, he's sitting out in the open air in samadhi, a state of deep samadhi, and then some yakshas, these are the fierce spirits, are passing by, and then one of them sees Sariputta sitting out there, in deep samadhi, and he says, "Look at that shaveling monk sitting there in samadhi. Who does he think he is? I'm going to give him bang him on the head." And then that yaksha uses his own supernatural power and bangs Sariputta on the head. And meanwhile, Moggallana is observing this and watching this. And then when Sariputta comes out of samadhi, Moggallana says to him, first when Sariputta comes out from samadhi, then Moggallana says to him, "How are you feeling?" And then Sariputta says, "Oh, it was so blissful in that samadhi, but I feel a bit of a headache." And then Moggallana says to him, "That's wondrous and amazing. While you were in samadhi, some powerful yakshas passed overhead, and one of them gave you a terrible blow on the head. And you say, 'I'm experiencing only a little,' such a fierce blow that it could have split an iron ball in pieces. But you say, 'I'm feeling only a little headache.'" And then Sariputta says, "It's wondrous and amazing that Moggallana, that you have that divine eye by which you could have seen all of this. For myself, I wouldn't even have the ability to see a little goblin, a mud goblin." So it seems Sariputta is saying that he doesn't have the psychic powers. And there are no accounts, I think, in the suttas of Sariputta exercising the supernormal powers.
Bhante, I'm not sure exactly where I heard this, but I thought I understood that once you have the supernatural powers, you don't have to come out of the jhanas in order to contemplate insight. Have you ever heard of such a thing?
No. No.
Maybe because of the way you rotate back to the lower jhanas and back and forth.
Yeah, but still to do insight. This is according again to the commentary in Visuddhimagga method. You come out from the jhana, so you're not in jhana, but the mind is still suffused with that tranquility and concentration and the agility that has been attained in the jhana. So it seems, this is maybe is why the view arises with some that you could practice insight in the jhanas, because the mind is sort of in the threshold state or the twilight zone between normal consciousness and the jhana. So it seems as though you're in the jhana, but technically you're not in the jhana. The mind has been suffused by those qualities of the jhana, but it's out enough to be able to exercise the faculty of distinction, of discrimination, to be able to distinguish the different phenomena and the arising and passing of the phenomena. Any further questions?
It's not so much a question,
Yeah.
maybe it is. Why would anybody be asking somebody else, especially a monk or nun, like, what did you attain? What are your powers? Like, why would one, like, it seems like not my business.
I think,
It is my business?
what is that?
I said, like, it feels like not my business. He said, it is my business.
No, it seems that simple-minded people base their faith on wonders and miracles. That's the basis for their faith. Isn't there something where Jesus refuses to perform the miracle? A what? Jesus. Jesus. I don't remember. Mm. Mm. I'll have to check up on that. Because that would sort of undermine at least the traditional. Yeah, of course, that has been yeah, of course, there's a. Yeah, yeah. Mm. 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 Yeah. Yeah, 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 exactly. Yeah, 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 yeah. Okay, I think we'll end for the day. And so at least we had today the miracle of instruction. Okay, so we'll end with 3 half bows to the Buddha.